So the other day I was thinking about the reason why am I in politics, right? What is the point? What am I trying to achieve by doing this, right? And around me, I remember seeing a lot of people with bad motivations for wanting to be in politics. One such motivation that I saw around me, one that I did not share, one that I still do not share, is the desire to be at the top of the moral hierarchy, right? So there's this sort of moral hierarchy of wokeness, right? And at the top, you have the people with neo pronouns who are the most woke, who are leading like the vanguard of woke ideology and deciding the next things, right? And then you have the lower level wokes who are listening to them, right? And then, some of the people realized, hey, I can be at the vanguard of wokeness if I start to be an anti-imperialist, right? So, for example, Palestine, right? Now you see so many liberals are actually now speaking positively about Palestine, right? And negatively about Israel, the state of Israel, right? And so these anti-imperialist wokes, they see that the oppression, maybe neocolonialism, you could say, or imperialism of the present day of the American empire and U.S. unipolarity, they see these countries as noble victim countries, right? Sort of like the noble savage myth, but instead applied to these victims of imperialism, right? And so they have this sort of almost anarchistic idea of siding with all oppressed people, right? And they say, oh, well, these are oppressed nations, right? Or these are oppressed countries, and we need to start siding with them to be on the top of the woke moral hierarchy. These anti-imperialists are using the struggle for national independence and socialism all across the world to be at the top of this sort of discourse, right? Now, this is something that I was surrounded with, and I never personally participated in this particular type of moralism. I never quite understood it. I always approach things from a different view because for me, I saw that there is a lot of sickness in society. I grew up in a very poor neighborhood, a predominantly black neighborhood, right? And so I was always acutely aware firsthand of the sicknesses in this society, right? And these things plaguing the community. And when I got older, I became more aware of the conditions of labor. I became more aware of the conditions of the everyday person who's just trying to get by. And I realized that we all are in the same boat. These poor and black communities are getting the roughest deal, right? But the other everyday people are also getting a rough deal, working crappy jobs for low pay, barely able to afford healthcare, this kind of thing, right? And so for me, it always came from a place of wanting to lift the everyday person, wanting to eliminate the poverty that I saw around me and raise the living conditions of the people around me. I never came from this wanting to be on top of a sort of woke discourse, right? Now, I learned how to play the game because I was surrounded by these people. The people you surround yourself with, you start to pick up some of what they do. But I never had a strong inclination to be doing things that way in particular, right? But there were some things that I see in myself and I see in a lot of political spaces that I wanted to talk about today, which are bad reasons to get involved in politics. The first one is tied to this sort of woke moralism, but it's runs as a larger category of things, and that is social clout, right? So maybe you're looking for general social clout. In this case, you're going to want to be maybe a populist or maybe you're just trying to appeal to the Democrat or Republican constituency or Trump constituency, right? You're trying to take something popular, or leftism. In a lot of cities, leftism is predominant and popular. You're trying to take something that's popular where you are and pick it up in order to have this social clout and tell people things they don't know, or lead people down an ideological path that they haven't previously gone down, right? In order to sort of have this social clout, in order to try to be an interesting person, and in order to have views where people are really going to agree with you and go, wow, preach, right? And this can be a good thing. It's good to make friends, right? Even if you make them through politics, it's good to make friends. But we're not in politics just to make friends. And we're not in politics just to please and agree with the average person and to mine for social clout, right? And on a smaller level, some people do this not so that the everyday person, when they go outside, will agree with them, but instead they do it so that their little circle, their little clique or, cult or group, right, all will agree with them. And maybe this is a group of people they know locally in real life. Maybe this is a group of people that they isolate themselves from the world in a lot of ways, and they actually spend a lot of time with an insular group of people online, right? So they find other like-minded people online, and then they fight for social clout within this little group of people online, right? And again, this can be a good thing. It's good to have organizations and communities. It's good to do this, right? But it is bad to be in politics for the purpose of having friends, for the purpose of participating in a community, right? And the main reason why this is a bad thing is simply because when it comes down to it, truth is over everything. Victory is over everything, right? So if a friendship has to become slightly awkward, if you have to work through disagreements and it makes it seem like you could be being unfriendly, right? You still have to do it. You absolutely still have to do it. And, people will sometimes see that you're trying to push for a successful strategy and they're your comrade, they're fighting alongside you, right? That's what comrade should mean. It means that the cause, right? It means that the success of communism is your priority. You are putting this over any kind of friendly social bond, right? Politics is not just a color that you wear. It's not just something that you use for aesthetic purposes, right? It is something which itself is a struggle, an objective struggle that you're participating in. And any type of social bond which gets in the way of this struggle, you have to put it underneath the struggle, right? This struggle comes above everything. So if you're doing this just for social clout, then what's going to happen is that, first of all, you won't be able to tolerate when other people inevitably disagree with you, right? Or if you do, then you go, oh, no, I never believed that. I'm just going to fall in line under this umbrella of belief, right? I'm going to protect myself from the rain of criticism from the outside world with this umbrella of belief that somebody else put over my head, right? Or you're going to say, oh, well, the whole reason I was in here was so that people would agree with everything I say. And now that they're not agreeing with everything I say, I'm going to turn on them and try to make my own clique, my own group, right? So it causes problems in that way. And when you want to criticize other people, then the only acceptable form of criticism is that which fits under this umbrella. You have no ability to improve other people, right? In their thinking, in their tactics. You have no ability to do this, right? So you can't be criticized. You can't criticize other people either. And furthermore, self-criticism only takes on the property of, again, that which fits under the umbrella of the clique, under the group, right? So rather than trying to be a vanguard and try to be the best of the group and trying to bring the group forward and critique problems with it, and even to step outside this umbrella and catch the rain from the outside world, that's critical, that's key, right? Then you're doing good in this group. And this may mean that people in the group like you and respect you and listen to you. That's all wonderful, right? But if you're there just to be liked, just to be respected, just to be listened to, then you are a problem. Then you are a problem. So being in politics just for social clout, it's no good. It is no good. And it's parasitical because you're taking the energy from the people in this group, right? When you participate in the group, you give your energy and you take energy, right? But when you're participating in a way that doesn't bring anything new in, then you're not really adding energy. I mean, at the very least, you can be friendly and be a cheerleader and all this, and that's fine, you know? That's fine, but when people aren't able to deliver this substantive thing, then I don't see them with a ton of respect. No offense, right? I just don't perceive you with a ton of respect if you're not thinking about what's next, right? If you're not trying to push the envelope, if you're not asking difficult questions, then I don't respect you particularly much, right? I just see you as someone that's along for the ride, which is fine. It's fine, but I'm just saying, like, that's not what I'm here for, right? The second reason that I see people get into politics for, that I myself am guilty of to some extent, again, like the first reason, I am guilty to some extent of being in politics for social clout, or rather what I would say is that social clout has a kind of anesthetizing effect on me. So when other people give me approval, when they respect me, when they cheer me on, this kind of thing, it's actually sort of, it can be very encouraging and positive and good, but depending on how it is, it can also be very anesthetizing, meaning numbing, meaning that it actually makes me start to get fat and start to just want to sit in place and say the same thing and not advance myself, right? And that's not good. That's not good. So the second thing that I've also seen in myself is idealism. Idealism, right? And a lot of people seem to approach things in such a way where they think that if they make their mind a certain way, right, if we just get the right ideas, if we just get the correct ideas, then everything will just be sorted out, right? Of course, the correct ideas are the ones which can actually be put into practice, right? Of course, spreading is one measure of success, right? But bad ideas can spread and ineffective ideas can spread, right? So spreading is not the only thing. An idea which spreads is a successful idea. An idea which works is a truly successful idea. If the idea has succeeded only as an idea and not as a practical political philosophy, then it's not truly a successful idea, right? So idealism is kind of like that. And people think that, okay, well, if I just breed the right mind virus to get people into the right state of mind, if I just push the right ideas, then people will start to do the right thing and society will start to heal itself, right? This kind of thing, right? But the measure of whether an idea is right is whether or not it can actually be put into practice. And that's key. So a lot of idealists end up talking about utopias. You know, it's very popular, for example, in a lot of spaces to say we shouldn't have lawns. We need to get rid of lawns, or we need to get rid of cars, or we need to just change society in this particular way, get rid of this one thing that annoys me. You know, oh, we shouldn't have babies crying on airplanes or whatever, you know. Okay, fine. You've stated a popular view, or a view that's at least popular among a certain type of person, right? You've stated this view and you've popularized it, and now everybody's thinking this way, or, you know, whatever, right? But this doesn't get you anywhere. You've gone absolutely nowhere. And that is the whole problem with idealism, is that the idea is the idea is the idea is the idea. And the idea itself never gets to evolve by being put into practice, right? Correct ideas come from social practice. right? And until they are put into social practice, there is nothing to them. And you can see exactly what happened with, for example, Chaz and Chop in Seattle. You had these idealists come in and try to put their ideals into practice for once, right? People have been talking about we need an anarchist society, we need to grow our own food, we need to be free of police and all these things for so long, right? And they've gotten so loud, this message is so popular, but it never got put into practice. Sure, a few cities defunded police and crime went up, right? Because the necessary secondary powers coming from the people, like the Black Panther Party, these people's organizations simply hadn't come into being yet to counterbalance the police, right? But in the case of Chaz and Chop, it was a very similar thing. This self-sufficiency hadn't actually evolved. It hadn't actually been put into practice. And when it was put into practice, it failed catastrophically and horribly. It didn't really become an anarchist society so much as CHOP, Capitol Hill occupied protest, right? So it simply became a special type of protest. It did not become anything, even though it sort of had the pretenses of being something like this, right? And this is very much in line with some ideas that have been around for a long time. Guy Debord would talk about authentic urbanism, right? As this thing where people authentically participate in their environment rather than the sort of artificial city and its restrictions and the way that it affects your thinking and behavior negatively. He's saying, no, we need to be authentic urbanists. We need to do graffiti and we need to build things based on what the people actually want and shape the environment to match the ideals of the mind, right? This kind of thing. Well, what did they end up doing? They ended up making a bunch of art, right? They didn't actually change the world, but they made a bunch of art, and maybe they changed how people think, but ultimately, these situationists, they didn't really achieve very much, right? And this is just like the ideas that went into Chaz. It's this authentic urbanism, right? But when it actually hits the pavement, there's not very much to it. It creates a spectacle, sure, right? But there's not actually that much to it. And hopefully, these anarchists that were in Chaz or saw Chaz saw this and said, hey, we need to evolve our ideas in some way. There's something wrong with the thinking that went into this, right? So instead of pushing the same ideas that we pushed before building Chaz and Chop, now we need to push new ideas, right? And so idealism manifests in another way in Marxist-Leninists, right? Because we saw how Soviet planning, it did succeed, right? But it also had its own problems and contradictions, which were reconciled through market socialism, right? Through this sort of state capitalism with state planning, in which capitalism is allowed to exist in a controlled way, but not like where every single element of capitalism is controlled, not where private ownership is completely minimized, but rather where it's allowed to exist and thrive and grow, provided that it does not create a new dictatorship, provided that it is still within the sphere and control of the people's state, right? So socialism with Chinese characteristics resolved the problems with the Soviet state planning. And a lot of idealists think that we need to recreate Soviet state planning because they have this ideal utopian society. They haven't learned from the practice of history to evolve their ideas, right? And this idealism is very, very common. And I often found myself just thinking and just thinking and thinking and thinking without even taking the first step, right? Now, communicating your ideas to the public is not the same as putting them into practice, but at the very least, it's the first step to evolving them into something bigger, into something better, right? And when you actually start to put them into practice, what this means, right? For example, in socialism means to build the Communist Party, right? Build the Communist Party, build a Communist Party, right? That needs to be put into practice. It absolutely does. And idealists will not support whatever actually manifests from their ideas, right? They're fundamentalists oftentimes. So instead of saying, oh, we put our ideas into practice here and it didn't work out for this and that reason and we need to adjust and change our ideas, instead they say these people didn't go by the book. It wasn't really what we said it was, what we said it should be, right? And next time we need to do it for real, right? So Soviet Union, it wasn't real communism. Chaz was not real anarchism, right? It wasn't really what it was supposed to be. Wrong. What it was is how the ideas hit the pavement and how they can then evolve, right? That's what that is. So this idealism is something I very much have seen in myself, very much arguing over what the ideal system should look like, arguing over how things should be or could be, instead of trying to wrestle and tackle the difficult and complex realities in front of us, right? Trying to make sense of these realities and to really engage with the world, not just of possibility, but the world of practice and all that is possible. And this is a very difficult thing, right? It's a very, very difficult thing. And most people, I think, on the left refuse to actually try to implement their ideas. Instead, what they have is what I would call headless socialism. So you have your detached head, you have your idea, and then you have the body of the organization, which is headless. There's no head, and it's carrying the head, right? So this headless organization, which is not operating in a sensible or realistic way to achieve its aims, but rather it's doing whatever it can to take this head, this Dullahan organization with a detached head, right, is going and here this head is speaking and saying, here's what we should do and here's what you should believe and all this stuff. But the body is separate from the head. It's carrying the head, right? I hope you understand what I mean by that, right? That's a manifestation of idealism. And the head will say, I'm doing something. Look at, this body carried me to you. This body is doing something, right? But this head is not actually attached to the body. So wherever the head goes with the body, it might change what it says, but at the end of the day, the body is just there to show the head around to the everyday person, right? And it's not attached to the practice. So the third thing that I think is a bad reason to get into communism or politics in general is this feeling of being a failure, right? This sort of underdog politics. You see maybe your other classmates or you see these very wealthy people and you resent that they have power or success, that they're rich, and you just wish that you could be on top, right? You, somebody who has no skills and talents or drive or anything, right? You are wishing that you could be on top like these talented, skilled, and driven people. Now, I'm not saying all these rich people all deserve it. They all earned it, right? But they had something to be there, right? They had something. Maybe they are just lucky and they got a very good education, right? But in this case, they still objectively know how to manage a business, right? They still objectively know more than you do about how to run a business, right? So the people that are rich are maybe corrupt, they may be evil, they may be ignorant, they may be liars, there may be all of these things about them, about maybe some of them, maybe even most of them, right? But that doesn't mean that they should be all on the bottom and you should be on the top. And this feeling of being a failure, this underdog politics, this is a terrible reason to be in politics. If you are in politics for this reason, then either you are a completely talentless person, right, who can't do anything well, and you just want to complain, and politics is your way of complaining, right? Or you're somebody who has misdirected their energy, as I have misdirected my energy into politics rather than building my life. I'm not saying that I shouldn't be in politics at all. What I am saying is that I have put more energy to politics than I should have when my life itself is not as together as I want it to be, right? That's a big part of why I'm on hiatus right now. I shouldn't have stayed with my old job as long as I did. Actually, for me, it's a good thing to be laid off from this job because soon I will have better opportunities in my life, right? So this feeling of being a failure, right? Now, it can be good for somebody who thinks that it's all just them as an individual, right? A lot of people, most people, are talented and smart people, right? Most people are a lot better than they think they are. They think they're bad because they have a low status, right? Most people in American society have a lower status because of the inequality in our society, right? And they blame themselves for it. Well, you shouldn't do that, right? This is society that created you, and society created you. Why shouldn't it provide for you? Right? Society created you. Why shouldn't it provide for you? And this is a fact. And if you are sick as an individual, if you're addicted to drugs, or if you have some problem, I'm not saying that everything's fucked and you should just give up and continue to have your problem, right? But what I am saying is that this is society which has failed you. It is not you. Right? It is not you. You're not a failure. You're not a fuck up. You need to actually transcend your conditions, right? But you yourself are not entirely responsible for your lot, right? You're not entirely responsible for your situation. And that's a healthy thing to realize. That's a good thing to realize, right? Just as much as you have failed, so too has society failed you. Just as much, if not more, has society failed you or you failed yourself, right? Depending on your life circumstances. So it's not black and white, right? But a lot of people who have failed then turn to politics, this sort of underdog politics that they should be on top and that they resent people who are rich and successful. The final and bad reason to be in politics is to attack people that you don't like, right? Prime example I would give of this is Sam Hyde, right? Sam Hyde. Now, he is very nihilistic. He doesn't think that it's possible to build a better society. He's very racist guy, like genuinely, right? And he represents this sort of me and mine, just get yours, right? Just don't worry about other people. Don't worry about people that aren't like white necessarily, right? Like just keep to your own race, keep to your own people, worry about yourself. Get yours, get me and mine. And, you know, he considers himself apolitical for this reason even, right? But he attacks these really annoying people and pisses them off and goes out of his way to piss these people off, pissing off the wokes and liberals. He goes way out of his way to do it, and there's genuinely something very satisfying about watching him piss these people off. There's something genuinely very satisfying, and I'm sure that he himself takes great satisfaction out of doing it, right? But that is not a good reason to be in politics. It's good to critique groups that you disagree with, right? Or these horrible groups that are hated by the public. It's fine to hate on them. That's fine. But if your whole reason for being in politics, or your main reason, is just to take down this other group, just to hate on people, you are in it for the wrong reason, and you will fall into nihilism, because ultimately you need to have some positive idea of what you actually want to achieve. Right? So you critique this group, but for what? Critique is supposed to improve something. It's supposed to solve the problems in something, right? That's what it does. It isn't just to take something down, say, not this, right? And further, critique should also not be to say, not this, and then here's my system which solves all of these problems. We're going to start from scratch again with a whole new, completely different set of ideas, right? Oh, no, screw whatever already exists or whatever's already popular. It has these and this and that problem. I have a system built from the ground up that doesn't have this problem. No. Right? Marx wrote a critique of capitalism to try to solve the contradictions within capitalism. Right? He was not saying we should be anti-capitalist, as in the polar opposite of capitalists, right? No, he is not saying that. No, he called it progressive, right? Capitalism is progressive to feudalism and to slavery, right? But then it inevitably falls to its own contradictions, right? So Marx reconciled the problems in capitalism by critiquing it, and that's what you have to do with critique. That's what you have to do with critique. Most of the time, people mean well, and they need a constructive and meaningful critique, not just insults and not just complete rejection, right? No, they need something that will actually help to strengthen their ideology, break off the parts that are bad or ineffective or meaningless, and refine it. And through this, most people's ideas become communism. Through this process of refinement and critique and solving the problems in their thinking, most people's ideas, as long as they're fundamentally humanist, become communism, right? They actually do. So these things, right? Wanting to attack a group that you hate, right? The first thing I said was social clout, right? You shouldn't be in politics just for social clout. Second, you shouldn't be in politics just for the ideas, right? Just to be an idealist. No. The third thing is, don't be in politics because you're an underdog and you feel like a failure. Don't be in politics as a cope for this feeling of failure. No. Solve your life, right? Make things better before you get into politics. Fourth thing is attacking a group that you hate, or attacking people that you don't like, or ideas that you think are wrong, which can be fine, which can be good, but most of the time you want to critique it, and critique is constructive, right? And if your main motivation is that hatred, you're not going to achieve very much at all. So, with that, I'm going to go into some good reasons to be in politics. The first one is a feeling of empowering not just yourself, but the people. People are in a bad state, right? People are in a bad state. They blame themselves for it too. They really genuinely do. Right? People want to assume that society is good and fair and just, and they will then blame themselves for whatever goes wrong in their life, or just try to cope, right? They don't want, nobody has a pretension of knowing how things should be, right? Very few people have a pretension of knowing how things should be. Those that do often come off as like, your Uncle Walter who says, this is what I would do if I was president, right? That is not what I mean by trying to empower people. What I mean by empowering people is to make them realize the power that they do have, which they do. We all have power, right? And to help them to realize that their situation is not their own doing, and that we don't have to sit down and take it, and things will get worse. They will genuinely get worse. And the less we do about it, and the more we sit there and take it, the worse it is going to get. and the less we will be able to do about it. So do not resign yourself to fate. Do something, right? Empowering people. That's a wonderful thing. Now, empowerment can be false. You can get false ideas about what to do, right? Or you can get false ideas about how soon things will change for the better, right? So you can't have this false empowerment, but this empowerment is a very good reason to be in politics. Wanting to empower yourself, empower the people around you to actually do something. The second thing is you want to simply make things better. Right? Such a simple thing. You just want to make things better. And you know that this is what humans do. We just want to make things better. We see something wrong, we want to make it better, you know? You want to fix it. You see someone sad, you want to make them happy, right? You have a family or friend that's in trouble and you want to go help them. You see people suffering in your community or in a particular community, naturally you just want to go help them. If you don't feel that way, then maybe you've been jaded by walking by too many homeless people begging for money, just that it gets annoying to you, you don't care, right? Maybe you become jaded. But if you don't have that, at least on some level, then I don't really know why you're in politics at all. What, you just want power? What is it? You know, what is it? You just want power? You just want war? You just want chaos? What's the point? What do you actually want to do at that point, right? Of course, when we say we want real change to make things better, well, this can mean a lot of things, right? What change? The question is then, what change? What do we actually do, right? But this fundamental motivation and desire to make things better, very key and important part of politics. And the third thing is actually this feeling of obligation. You know, the world we take for granted, but this world has many wonderful things in it. You know, this country, America, it's a beautiful country. It has poverty, but it's a rich country, right? I live a comfortable and happy life, full of opportunity, friends and family. I'm very blessed. I'm very lucky. And personally, I feel that I haven't given back to this world that made me. I feel that I may be the last generation or one of the last generations to grow up in a state where we feel like somewhat stable, right? Where we feel like there might be a future. Now, millennials who are a little older than me, Zoomers are younger, I'm between, right? But millennials who are older than me have felt this disappointment, right? They were raised with these high hopes and aspirations, and then they became very disappointed by the actual state of things. But at least they were raised in this state. Zoomers, I do not see. Among Generation Z, I do not see this same thing at all. I really don't. There's a lot of like nihilism and doomerism and this sense, you know, that they won't be able to grow up and live a happy life, right, among this generation. And it's very sad. And, you know, this social duty we have, right? We have this duty, we have this obligation to make the next generation better off than we are. Not worse off, better off. And we're not doing it. It's not happening. Collectively, we're failing to do this. Now, you could blame the older generations who have power and resources, right? You could go blame them. But we should do what we can. If you're just blaming the older generations and not doing what you can, what are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, do you really hate your parents? You know, and grandparents? No, absolutely not, right? Absolutely not. I mean, maybe you do, but I hope not, right? And you don't hate them for their age. It's because they did something, right? It's not because, you know, but collectively, this older generation, right? And maybe it's just the corrupt politicians in this older generation that built this world, right? But collectively, this older generation has failed to create a better world for their children, to create a better world for this younger generation. And now we are failing the same thing. And there's this feeling that things should be better, that things should be improving. We know this is true. The advent of new technologies and, all of these things, people are smarter and more peaceful than they've ever been for the most part, right? Why are things getting worse? Why is life expectancy in this country starting to decline? Why are living conditions stagnant and declining? What's going on, And so we have this social duty, we have this social obligation. We really do. So these are the good reasons why I think a person should be in politics: to empower themselves and the people around them, to fight for real change, and because of this social duty that we have. These are all very good reasons to be in politics, right? And these are reasons that I personally want to uphold, right? I aspire to be a leader of my community. I aspire to be a leader of people in general. I aspire to make things better. I aspire to all of these things. And I know that I have a lot more work to do, a lot more, you have to be able to walk in the rain and get out from your circle and get out from under your umbrella. You have to be able to dig in the dirt of reality, of material, and to deal with all of these difficult and complex things as they are. I have to deal with getting my life together so that I have the time and motivation to do more political work. And I have to have the strength and the courage and forgiveness to stop obsessing and fixating on groups that I don't like and start fixating on what I actually want to positively achieve, right? That is the key. That is the key. And so I just wanted to make this video to express what I've been thinking about, and I hope you guys agree. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. This channel is not dead. It is not dead. I will be uploading in the future when I have the time, and I hope to see you all in the future. So bye-bye.